We've got to keep building that line of scrimmage. The Miami Hurricanes are now being crystal balled to land one of the top offensive linemen in the country.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That great wall of Mirabal is going to be a beautiful thing for years to come. I am Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We are free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube, and we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're also going to talk on this episode about EA Sports getting us all hyped up and all excited again with more details on the upcoming release of College Football 25. But before we talk about video game football, I want to talk about actual football because, as we know, Miami they're an offensive line driven program. Head coach is a former offensive lineman. I believe Miami's offensive line coach, Alex Mirabal, is one of the best in the country, and it's a big point of pride for them. And that's going to be a big emphasis in this upcoming recruiting class. Miami did recently land offensive tackle Lamar Williams out of the Tallahassee area, who's a giant at like 6'7". And now predictions are coming in. A pair of 24/7 sports crystal balls have come in from Miami to land 4-star interior offensive lineman, 6'3", 290-pound Seauseu Alofaituli. He goes by SJ, and I'm going to call him SJ because that name of his is formidable. But this is exactly the kind of player we want to be making up Miami's offensive line for years to come. And again, this is not a commitment. This is a projection, a pair of crystal balls. Tom Loy of 24/7 and Gabby Urrutia of 24/7 have put in predictions for Miami to land SJ, who's one of the better interior O-linemen in the country. He's a 4-star. Now, he can play guard or center, but I think Miami's looking at him probably to fill the center position. He comes out of a powerhouse high school program, Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. I'm sure you've heard of it by now. His former teammate, Elijah Lofton, who played for Bishop Gorman, just signed with Miami in the class of 2024. So when it comes to Alofaituli, Michigan, Oregon, Alabama, Texas A&M, among others, are still in it for SJ. But, of course, the projections are pointing to Miami being the favorite right now. I don't even think he's visited yet. I think he's got a visit coming up soon. But he's had great conversations with Cristobal, Mirabal, and company. And, guys, this is a blue-chip center. This is a top 24/7 guy. This is a 4-star guy. And when it comes to blue chip centers, this is something Miami has needed to land in recruiting. Like, they've got to get one in this cycle. Like, you remember 2 cycles ago, 2023, Miami for a while had a commitment from Connor Liu, but he ended up flipping to Auburn. And I thought at the time Liu was the best center recruit in the country. I still feel he was, because the reviews he's getting from Auburn folks are tremendous so far. I think he's going to end up being one of the best centers in America. Miami missed out on him, so I hope we don't miss out on this one. So over the past 2 years, Hurricanes have done a nice job grabbing experienced centers, grabbing stopgap guys in the transfer portal. Matt Lee in 2023. Now Miami's gotten Zach Carpenter from Indiana, who I think is really good, but these are one-year guys. Developing your own guys from the ground up, I think, is key, and that's exactly what Mirabal and Cristobal put so much pride in, is developing these guys from the ground up. Now, Miami did land what I think is a good center, Nino Francavilla, in the class of 2024. He's more of a project, a lesser-rated guy. I think he could end up being really good here, but landing a blue chip type of guy like SJ, this is a bona fide blue chipper, and this would be awesome to land. Now, I'm going to attempt to say his name one more time. Seauseu Alofaituli is being crystal balled to Miami. Really good interior offensive lineman, probably going to be a center out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. This has become a busy season for crystal balls and RPM predictions, which are the On3 Sports version of crystal balls. Miami is also projected to land 4-star Miami Central defensive lineman Randy Adarica, 6'5", 250 pounds. Miami would like him to follow in the footsteps of Ruben Bain and Armando Blunt. Every year, Miami tries to grab D linemen out of Central. So Adarica, he's got a 24/7 crystal ball and an on-3 RPM to land at the U. Hurricanes, as we've talked about on the show in recent days, received an RPM prediction to land American Heritage running back Byron Lewis, 5'11", 200 pounds, 4-star running back. Miami got a really good American Heritage running back a couple cycles ago. You may remember Mark Fletcher. They would like Byron Lewis to follow in his footsteps. Other important recruiting targets. And folks, I'm not going to mention every single one because there are literally dozens, if not over 100 important recruiting targets. You're not going to land them all, obviously, but there's a lot of important recruiting targets for Miami in the class of 2025. But other players that I look at as really being key, Tampa area defensive back DJ Pickett out of Zephyr Hills. He's been and will continue to be a prime target for Miami. 7th-ranked national recruit, top recruit within the state of Florida. It's my understanding that Miami is very high on DJ Pickett's short list. I think also on that short list for him, a bunch of heavy hitters like Georgia, LSU, Michigan, and Oregon. I think they're Miami's top competition here, but I do feel cautiously optimistic, in my opinion, that Miami might be at least in a slight lead for DJ Pickett. And of course, ton of family connections for him at Miami. His cousin, Booker Pickett Jr., is a signee. His uncle, Booker Pickett Sr., is a former Miami defensive lineman from the 90s. His younger cousin, Cannon Pickett, is obviously not a Hurricane, at least not yet. But Cannon, who's a 2026 offensive lineman, really likes Miami. So, maybe we can create that sort of a family atmosphere for DJ Pickett, who's a really important player. Other players we've been monitoring here on Locked On Canes. 5-star wide receiver Jamie French out of Mandarin in Jacksonville. 4-star wide receiver Cortez Mills out of Homestead. I'm really getting more engaged in his recruitment. He recently told Cortez Mills, excellent receiver. This is another guy who's close to a must-get for us, especially being in the area, Dade County guy. He recently told Chad Simmons of On3 that 5 schools are standing out to him right now, and that includes Miami, Clemson, LSU, Nebraska, and Penn State. Here's a quote from his interview with Simmons. Talking about Kevin Beard, we know the recruits love KB. He connects so well with players. He has trained receivers that put up stats, Mills said. That really shows me that they, being Miami, can keep throwing them the ball, and Beard is going to help them develop. He says they still keep in contact and make sure I'm doing well. He said they always get me in the building and show love. The environment is great over there, he said about Miami. Other recruits who I really love, 4-star cornerback Chris Ewalt out of Chaminade. I think this guy's virtually a must-get for us. Miami needs blue-chip cornerbacks. According to Kane Sport, Miami is still recruiting some guys committed elsewhere, like Gators commit and 4-star Jalen Wiggins, who's a 6'5", 235-pound defensive lineman out of the Tallahassee area. And Miami is still, as we talked about earlier this week on Locked On Canes, Miami is still heavily recruiting 5-star offensive lineman Solomon Thomas, despite him being committed to Florida State. Miami is still chipping away there. Miami is expected this summer to host 4-star offensive lineman Zaire Addison. That's another player who competed at Under Armour Orlando. We talked about him with Brian Smith earlier on this week. So there's a lot of positive stuff going on in recruiting. I want to talk about some positive stuff on and off the field, because another thing I want to talk about is you start to see these way too early top 25s for next year. Miami came in at number 12 on the 24/7 Sports way too early top 25. Came in at number 24 on ESPN's way too early. ESPN puts out this other ranking metric, which is more analytics based, whereas, the way too early top 25s are just kind of predictions on how the seasons might go and how good these teams are. There's more analytics that go into what they call the SP plus rankings. And Miami is, spoiler alert, a little higher on the SP plus than they are on that way too early top 25. We'll explain why an ESPN writer has referred to Miami as a team to buy, heading into, like the old NSYNC song, buy, heading into the 2024 season. You want to keep it locked right here, friends. We'll also talk about the EA Sports college football game right here on a new episode of Locked On Canes. And yeah, we're going to keep talking about FanDuel. As long as we keep winning money, we're going to keep talking about it, guys. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. I'm glad my Miami Heat are playing better. I'm starting to win money on them again. You can bet on all your favorite NBA teams and players with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. Guys, I enjoy the player props with my favorites like Jimmy, Bam, Jaime Jaquez Jr. There's always so much action you can find at FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sports partner, an official sports book partner, I should say, of the NBA. Thank you so much for making this new episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're an everydayer looking to take your everydayer experience to the next level, sign up for our exclusive Locked On Canes Insiders chat. I include a link in the show description below. You guys can get text messages directly from my phone to yours with breaking news. You can ask me one-on-one questions, recruiting updates, show notes, all this and more at Locked On Canes Insiders. Try it free with the link below. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, after 2 weeks, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. And we give you a lot of added value on there at Locked On Canes Insiders. I am terrible at video games, but for basically my entire life, going back to my teenage years, I always loved playing the EA Sports college football game. They discontinued it after the Ed O'Bannon ruling. 2013 was when the last game came out. Now that we've got name, image, and likeness, players can profit off this. The EA Sports college football game is coming back, and we think it's coming back sometime this summer. So EA Sports gave us a teaser today. They literally gave us a teaser trailer for the game, which does show some production images from the game. Doesn't show any actual gameplay. They're making us wait for that, but they're hyping this up, talking about the anticipation and all the college traditions and superstitions, just getting people really excited for the game. So they did say the game is going to drop this summer. Didn't give an exact date. Now, a rumored date that's been out there is July 12th. They haven't confirmed that, but they said it's coming out this summer. And they also said that they're going to have more on the game in May. So maybe May is when we're going to be able to pre-order. Maybe May is when they're going to actually show us some gameplay and announce exactly when this thing is going to be available. You know, if you want to wait in line at the store like the old days, or if you're like me, you'll probably just order a download whenever it becomes available. But we're getting a little bit closer to this college football game dropping. And guys, I'm telling you, I'm so pumped for this because, again, I stink at most video games. Let me get that out of the way, all right? But in my lifetime, I believe I have spent more hours playing the old EA Sports college football game than I have any other video game I've ever played. That includes Super Mario. That includes FIFA, which I do play quite a bit. That includes Madden, which to me doesn't hold a candle to the old college football games. I love the Dynasty mode so much. The opportunity that we have coming up this summer to be able to play with or as Cam Ward, to play as Ruben Hurricane Bain, sacking quarterbacks, Kiko Maui Noah, tackling people for safeties that the ACC officials don't give him credit for. All those, I wonder if the ACC officials are going to be awful in the game as they are in real life. Like, do you think that if EA really wants to create like an accurate game experience, they have to put into their algorithm, ACC officials are blind, enter. So I don't know if that's the sort of authentic experience that we're going to get, but we did get a teaser trailer. I wrote about it at allhurricanes.com, and we know the game is going to come out this summer, maybe July 12th, maybe some other date, but either way, I am ready. I am ready to play as the Miami Hurricanes in a dynasty, and I absolutely cannot wait for it, okay? All right, so friends, we've talked about these certain rankings that are coming out way too early, top 25s. 24/7 Sports gave Miami maybe too much respect, calling Miami number 12 in their way too early. ESPN ranked Miami 24th in their way too early. The sports books have Miami at over under 9.5 wins. 9.5 over under. Same win total as Clemson and Florida State. Miami is one of 3 teams in the ACC with a 9.5 win total heading into next year. Hurricanes are getting a lot of respect. People clearly see what Miami's done in recruiting, what Miami's doing in the transfer portal, and some of the players who were freshmen and sophomores last year who are going to be even more ready to make an impact this coming season. And the Hurricanes are getting respect for that. So there's another metric that is called the SP Plus on ESPN. And in the SP Plus, which factors in returning production, recent recruiting, and recent history. Obviously, the recent history criteria is what Miami would be a little bit weaker in coming off a 7-6 season. But recent recruiting, Hurricanes have had consecutive classes in the top 7 and the top 5. In returning talent, with guys, and we'll talk about the top returning talent at Miami, but I think you guys know who the key players are going to be on this team, in addition to some of the players who came over in the transfer portal. So according to that SP Plus analytic, which factors in returning production, recent recruiting, and recent history, they ranked Miami 21st in the country, which is higher than the way too early top 25, where ESPN ranked Miami at 24th. And this is what Bill Connolly at ESPN wrote about Miami. He considers them to be in the category called buy. B-U-Y, B-U-Y. Not like see you later, goodbye, like buy this now, buy this stock, buy stock in the Miami Hurricanes. And he says this because, quote, hey, look, another team you've probably been burned by buying into before, he says. Mario Cristobal enters a big third season with a healthy number of returning starters, some interesting transfers, Washington State quarterback Cam Ward, Washington nickelback Mishael Powell, Marshall edge rusher Elijah Alston, who we probably don't talk about enough, and another highly ranked recruiting class. The Canes improved to 28th in the SP Plus last season, but a 2-4 record and 1 score finishes held their record back. So he does expect Miami to be a team whose stock is going to be soaring. And, I don't have to talk to you guys too much because we do it so much on this show about transfer portal players. Connolly hit on a few of those about the recruits from last year and coming in this year, how Miami's had top 10 classes consecutively. But I did want to take a moment here and recognize the top returning players, like players who were on Miami's roster last year, played key roles, who are going to be back this coming season, right? And some of these players are still ascending players that can still and probably will get better in this season coming up, because it's not just about who Miami brought in. It's also about who Miami brings back. So I've got about 10, 11 players here who I believe are going to be the top returning players on this football team. And as always, you guys are more than welcome to comment and critique. You can follow us on X at Locked On Canes. And if you follow us, by the way, at Locked On Canes, we will follow you back. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can comment on the YouTube channel. Am I missing anybody on the guys who I feel are going to be the top returning Miami Hurricanes players in the upcoming 2024 football season? I'll tell you, a guy that I put at the top of the list was one of the top freshman players last year. And honestly, I think this guy could be the best player on the team for the next 2 or 3 years, however long he plans to stay. And that's Ruben Hurricane Bain. I mean, this guy, as a true freshman, was borderline unblockable last year. Most productive freshman defensive lineman in the country. I think this year he's going to be the most productive D lineman in the country, period. Either him or Cam Ward, who's obviously not a returning Miami Hurricane, but I think either Bain or Cam Ward are going to be the best player on the team this year. So Ruben Bain is at the top of my list. Kiko Mauinoa, returning linebacker. He's right up there near or at the top as well. We talk about the guys who left early for the NFL who maybe could have benefited by staying another year. I mean, listen, I wish them all well, right? Maybe if Leonard Taylor had returned for another year, could have risen his draft stock even higher. Maybe James Williams, same thing. Maybe Matt Lee, same thing, right? Some of these guys left with a little meat on the bone, right? A guy who had that opportunity to leave and decided not to is Kiko Mauinoa. Kiko loves playing at Miami, loves playing with his younger brother, Seauseu Alofaituli. And Miami is so lucky to have this guy because he was one of the very best linebackers in the country. I also put Xavier Restrepo right there in top returning players. Over 1,000 yards last year, second leading receiver in the ACC. People don't give this guy enough respect, I guess, because they don't think a slot receiver should be a number one receiver. But X has been putting up those type of numbers, and this guy works so hard on his route running, on his film study, on his hands. He's so dependable. Now, someone who's a little less dependable, but productive on the field when he's not committing penalties, Jacoby George. I do also rank Jacoby, who was the ACC's third leading receiver last year and scored 8 receiving touchdowns, which was pretty darn impressive last season. I think he was second in receiving touchdowns in the ACC. Jacoby George, as long as he can, keep himself focused, is going to be one of the most impactful returning players. And I also mention him because Cam Ward is reportedly building chemistry with Jacoby in workouts so far. Mark Fletcher, I've got to include him in here. I hope he gets healthy and well soon. I don't think he's going to partake in spring football coming off surgery, but Fletcher, another one of the most productive players in the country, and he's a really impact guy at running back for Miami. You could almost argue everybody returning on the offensive line, right? Because from Jalen Rivers, who probably didn't get enough credit for the work he did at left tackle last year. Miami did lose Javion Cohen, which leaves big shoes to fill. And they did lose Matt Lee. Zach Carpenter's going to try to fill his shoes. But, Inez Cooper at right guard, monster. Seauseu Alofaituli at right tackle. He's going to be heading into his sophomore year. That dude was already really good last year. He's going to get even better. So the offensive lineman, and a quick side note on the offensive line. We're hearing really good feedback on the work being done by guys like Tommy Kinsler and JUCO transfer Markel Bell. That maybe both of those guys, Kinsler especially, could be competing for the starting left guard job. That Kinsler could end up being the one to replace Javion Cohen from last year. Kinsler is a mountain of a man, hardworking young player. I've talked a lot about Matt McCoy as maybe being a favorite for that spot. Kinsler could give him a run for his money. So be on the lookout for Kinsler. A couple more players I'll throw in. Top returning Miami Hurricanes players heading into this coming season. Daryl Porter at cornerback. Graded out as a lockdown corner last year. Probably didn't get enough respect. And there's going to be so much youth in the defensive backfield. I'm also glad Mish Powell is coming in. He's not a returning player, but he's an experienced Washington safety. But, there's not a whole lot of experienced guys in Miami's defensive backfield. Daryl Porter is an ultimate veteran at this point. And I got to throw a shout out to the kicker. Automatic Andy, Groza Award candidate last year, Andy Borregales. I'm so glad he's back for one more year, and then they could do that kind of graceful transition in 2025 from Borregales to Abram Murray, who's a true freshman this year, was the top kicker in the country coming out of high school. So those, to me, are guys who I expect to be among the most impactful returning Miami Hurricanes, and they're a big part of the reason why Miami is getting respect as number 21 in the ESPN SB Plus rankings. All right, my friends. What's official? We talked about it a little bit on this show, but Miami has officialized the hiring of their new running backs coach. So we're gonna welcome him to the U. And Miami is they are casting a wide net in their search for a new defensive backs coach. We'll explain what I mean when we come back on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Keep it locked. And I know you're keeping it locked to Game Time. Guys, when I need tickets to a sporting event, concert, comedy show, even last-minute tickets, I open up the Game Time app because I always know I'm getting the best deals and the best possible experience on the Game Time app. It's a free app to download, and then you get the best deals on tickets. Guys, they have these flash deals, zone deals right up until the last minute. You can see the view directly from your seat, so you know exactly the angle you'll be looking at there, and they give you the all-in pricing. So they're not going to tack on the fees at the end. You know exactly what you're going to pay. And guys, last-minute deals, a really hot ticket tonight at Drive Pink Stadium. Leo Messi and Inter Miami are taking on, in a friendly, Messi's boyhood club, Newell's Old Boys from Argentina. So it's Messi against the club he started his career with You can find great deals on tickets, the best deals at Game Time. You can find great deals on upcoming Miami Heat and Florida Panthers games. There's an Usher concert that's going to be down here. You can find the best deals on tickets for. I'm telling you guys, you have to check out Game Time, and you have to check it out soon. Browse through the Game Time app, guys, and use our code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Use our code Locked On for $20 off. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube, and we're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So this was first reported a little over a week ago. I think it was by Matt Zenitz from 24/7, who first reported that USF running backs coach Matt Merritt was going to be taking that same job at Miami, that Coach Merritt was going to come in and replace Tim Harris Jr. So it's been out there. We talked about it on the show for over a week. It was made official last night. Miami gave out a press release announcing Matt Merritt, welcome to the new running backs coach at the University of Miami. I've already reached out to Coach Merritt to congratulate him, and I loved his response to me that he is ready to get to work. I love that. I love that because, again, I've always been told about Coach Merritt, really energetic recruiter, and you have to be that to thrive on a Mario Cristobal staff. And he is looking forward to getting to work, and he's looking forward to embracing that work. Here's some of the important pieces here from Miami's press release. In his most recent stop at USF, Merritt helped the Bulls produce 12 team and 16 individual records as the team capped off the biggest turnaround in USF history, a 6-win improvement last year. I hope Miami can get a 6-win improvement. That would mean they'd be playing in a college football playoff. And they beat Syracuse in the Boca Raton Bowl 45-0. That was almost a Georgia versus FSU caliber beatdown. Mario Cristobal said, I'm really excited to welcome Coach Merritt, his wife, Brittany, and his 2 sons, Daniel and Thomas, to the Miami Hurricanes family. Coach Merritt is one of the bright young minds in college football. He made a great impression on our staff with his knowledge, his ability to teach the techniques and fundamentals of the running back position, his presence and his insight from working with multiple productive offensive systems. Coach Merritt has enjoyed success at every level of football, and his knowledge and versatility due to that experience brings a lot of value to our organization. He is a family man with a tremendously high care factor for developing student athletes. USF last year, their running game performed very well because Merritt was not only their running backs coach, but he was their run game coordinator. So he was designing their running plays. And that's important because USF's quarterback was their top rusher, and he did a great job. So maybe Merritt is going to design some plays for Cam Ward to pick up some yards. But USF as a team, they ran for 182.8 yards per game. That ranked 3rd in the AAC conference. They posted 5,871 total yards. That's 451 per game. That's the 3rd best mark in program history. And not only did their quarterback, Byron Brown, have a good year running the football, but Naquan Wright, former Gators running back, had the best year of his career. At the transfer, he ran for 797 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. So Matt Merritt he's young, but he's got a good recent track record, and hopefully he can do some great things at the University of Miami. So Merritt's hiring has become official. What has not become official yet. Oh, and I will also add in Merritt, one of his previous stops was working under Urban Meyer at Ohio State, and one of the players he coached there was Ezekiel Elliott. This was back in 2013 to 2015. He also worked with Curtis Samuel, and he coached Carlos Hyde and Braxton Miller. So he's got really good experience going back to his time at Ohio State. So we've got a running backs coach. Do not have a defensive backs coach yet. That's been open for a shorter amount of time after Jamil Adai left to become the cornerbacks coach with the Buffalo Bills. And first of all, safe to say Miami is casting a wide net here to find the next defensive backs coach. And I felt like a proud father in a way last night when I saw the Miami Hurricanes, the University of Miami, have made a LinkedIn jobs post to announce the vacancy, that they're taking applications for the next defensive backs coach, I feel like a proud dad because here I am, here on Locked On Canes. You guys know that one of the most important sponsors in the Locked On Canes family is LinkedIn Jobs. I've been talking about LinkedIn Jobs the last 2 years here on Locked On Canes and how it is the best place to hire. And clearly, the University of Miami agrees with me that LinkedIn Jobs is a great place to post their open jobs. So that's actually out there. You can, if you're qualified, you can apply through LinkedIn Jobs to please, only if you're qualified, apply to become the next defensive backs coach at Miami. So, with what, and Mario Cristobal does these coaching searches very quietly. From what we know so far about the names that are in the mix, the top 3 candidates at this moment, you could say, are probably Chevis Jackson at Marshall, cornerbacks coach for the Thundering Herd. He may have the leg up because he worked with Lance Guidry a couple of years ago. They have a good working relationship and good rapport. So Chevis Jackson is up there. And more recent names who we've talked about on the show, Evan Cooper from Nebraska, who's a South Florida native with some South Florida recruiting ties, and Mark Orphey from Rutgers, who's got a good recent track record. And, his corners had a really good year. And, the team that he coaches on did beat Miami in the Pinstripe Bowl. So those could be the top 3 candidates right now. I hope they applied through LinkedIn Jobs, which is the best place to find a job, and it's the best place to hire. All right, so my friends, I appreciate everyone taking the time to make Locked On Canes your first listen today. Sorry that this episode came out a little bit later than usual. Had to take my wife's car in for repairs this morning. And of course, they always find more things wrong with it than you think are going to be there. It was a whole process, but we're here now. And I appreciate you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button and subscribe to Locked On Canes on YouTube. If you listen to the audio version, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.